to order the meeting of the Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Members' Public Bills. My name is Brad Rutherford, MLA for Leduc-Beaumont and Chair of the committee. And we will start with introductions around the table, starting to my right.
Jeremy Nixon, Calgary Klein.
Jordan Walker, Sherwood Park.
Martin Long, West Yellowhead.
Rhonda Rosen, Banff, Kananaskis.
Good morning, Chris Nielsen, MLA for Edmonton Decor.
Good morning, I'm Trafton Koenig with the Parliamentary Council Office.
Good morning, Nancy Robert, Clerk of Journals and Committees.
Good morning, Jody Rempel, Committee Clerk.
And going online, we'll start with MLA Sigurdsson, please.
Good morning, Lori Sigurdsson, Edmonton Riverview.
MLA Dang.
Good morning, Thomas Dang, Edmonton South.
MLA Fry.
Good morning, Michaela Fry, Brooks Medicine Hat.
And Member Irwin.
Janice Irwin, Edmonton Highlands, Norwood.
Thank you. A few housekeeping items to address. Direction from the Honourable Speaker Cooper is that members are to be wearing masks in the committee room unless you are speaking, and to maintain an appropriate amount of physical distance between each person at the table. Microphones are operated by Hansard staff, and the committee proceedings are being live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Assembly TV as well. Those participating by video conference are asked to please turn on your camera while speaking and mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and please set your cell phones and other devices to silent. On to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the draft agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to move the agenda? Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Has moved that the agenda for the November 1st, 2021 meeting of the Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Members' Public Bills be adopted as distributed. Any other comments to that? And I'll just call the question. All those in the room in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed in the room, please say no. And moving online, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And anyone online that is opposed, please say no. That motion is carried. Approval of the minutes. Members, we have the minutes of our last meeting to review. Are there any errors or omissions to note? If not, would a member like to move a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you. MLA Nixon has moved that the minutes of the October 26, 2021 meeting of the Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Members' Public Bills be approved as distributed. Any other comments to that? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor in the room, please say aye. Aye. Anybody in the room opposed, please say no. And moving online, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And anyone online opposed, please say no. Hearing none, that motion is carried. Moving to the review of Bill 220 with stakeholder presentations. On the meeting of October 26th, the committee agreed to invite stakeholders to provide oral presentations on Bill 220, the Employment Standards Expanding Bereavement Leave Amendment Act 2021. And according to the committee's agreed upon process for stakeholders, they may make a presentation for up to 5 minutes, followed by up to 15 minutes of questions. And we will now be moving to the one stakeholder who has agreed to join us this morning. Ms. Aditi Loveridge, the owner of Pregnancy Loss Healing and founder of the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center. I want to thank you for joining us this morning and presenting today. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation, and that will be followed by 15 minutes of questions. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak on Bill 220. It's an absolute honor. 1 in 4 families, that is 1 in 4 Albertans, will experience a loss on their path to parenthood. While miscarriage and stillbirth impact so many, the support offered in places of employment is deeply lacking. Bill 220 is a really good first step to help build awareness, decrease stigma, and begin to change the narrative around loss. Having miscarriage and stillbirth included and named in bereavement leave helps society understand that not only does this happen, that it can be deeply impactful for many, and it deserves a space to process without the risk of job loss. It helps bereaved families know that their loss is valid and real, 2 things that are currently under-acknowledged. This can help the disenfranchised grief around pregnancy loss to come out of the shadows. It also helps employers to offer something tangible as a way of support. When families feel adequately supported in their workplaces, they show up in their jobs better, creating loyal employees and thus helping the economy. Bill 220 will allow a safe space for employees who have had a miscarriage or stillbirth to have their loss acknowledged by their employer and define their experience as their own. It acknowledges that a loss at 6 weeks versus 18 weeks both deserve support as needed. Oftentimes, families who have experienced early loss feel that they need to push through. And what this bill does is it validates that loss is loss if a person defines it as such and gives them permission to take the time needed. As I've said, Bill 220 is a good first step. And in my professional and personal experience, more needs to be done. So 3 days is simply not enough time. For some, the physical part of a loss can take 3 days or longer. For my co-founder, Danielle Kaluski, once she found out her daughter had died at 38 weeks gestation, it took 3 days from being induced to birthing her daughter still. For myself, when I experienced an ectopic pregnancy, my physical recovery lasted much longer than 3 days, and the mental and emotional healing came after. 3 days is a start, and it's simply not enough. When an employee returns to work, more education and awareness is definitely needed to help employers adequately support this deeply meaningful and complex journey. When an employee returns to work, the need for compassionate care and understanding does not end. The sensitivity training on what to say, what not to say, can be extremely meaningful. As experts in this area, the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center are more than happy to work with both bereaved families and their employers to ensure effective and meaningful support is offered to bereaved families navigating loss. With financial support from the government, we would be able to provide training to employers to educate them on how they can better support an employee who has lost a baby. We have seen a big gap for a central location of resources and information for employees and their employers to help all affected by loss. In Ontario, Bill 141 provided funding that allowed the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Network, the leading community organization in Ontario, to become the central hub for all miscarriage and stillbirth related resources and community support. This streamlined services between hospitals, communities, and employers, ultimately providing more adequate support to those experiencing loss and ensuring that no one was without resources. As the primary pregnancy and infant loss community organization here in Alberta, we can do this for Alberta, leading the way among other provinces and increasing capacity in our healthcare system. I would also invite change to the language in Bill 220 as it needs to be clearly defined. The word parent is unclear. This bill is about the birthing person and the birthing person's network. There should be inclusionary words such as surrogacy and missed adoption, as not all birthing parents are parents, or not all birthing persons are parents. So as I've said numerous times, Bill 220 is a good first step. It's an incredible first step, and our community is extremely grateful to have it brought forward. This bill and our collaborative discussion today is a nonpartisan issue. Loss knows no party lines. And Bill 220 shows collaboration between all parties for the betterment of those navigating loss in this province. Our community thanks you deeply for wanting to further the support of our community. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We will now move to 15 minutes of questions. Just looking to the room for who would like to start.
Mr. Wren has joined us.
Thank you. And just before, Member Irwin, you'll be first up. MLA Rain, if you want to just introduce yourself for the record, please, since you just joined.
Pat Rain.
Thank you. MLA Irwin, you're up for a question, please.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, just great to see you again, Aditi. And just I have to tell you, just to make you blush a little bit, we definitely had some bipartisan love for you in the last committee meeting. And so I think it's great that we can agree upon how important it is the work that you do, you and your organization. So thank you so much. You touched on this a little bit, but can you maybe just elaborate a little bit more, just telling us more about what pregnancy loss is? Can we understand it to be both planned and unplanned, and perhaps just, you know, some of the many effects across these kind of losses, you know, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and so on?
Yeah, so the first question, what is pregnancy loss? So pregnancy loss is a death of a baby or fetus, an unborn baby or fetus at any point in pregnancy. So that can include miscarriage, which is a loss under 20 weeks. That can include molar pregnancy, chemical pregnancy, ectopic pregnancy. And then there's stillbirth, which is a loss over 20 weeks. And that can include termination for medical reasons, stillborn, and abortion. And can you please repeat the second question?
Absolutely. I know I threw a lot on you in one question. Just, you know, the physical, mental, spiritual, like what sort of effects happen to someone? I know the experience is not universal.
Yes, and thank you for saying that. The experience is definitely not universal. And I think what's really not talked about enough and not identified enough is how deeply impactful it can be for some. And when it impacts those that are impacted by it, it affects every aspect of somebody's life. So we're not just talking about a loss and we're talking about grief over here. We're talking about it affects relationships, it affects our behaviors, it affects our spirituality. If we were faith-based, do we believe in that faith? Do we believe in God? If we weren't faith-based, what do we believe in now? It affects our mental health, our emotional well-being. No matter the circumstances under which that loss happened, there is some emotion and some complexities that come from it. So whether it was a planned pregnancy, unplanned pregnancy, people experience impact to some degree, and that impact deserves to be supported.
Great. Can I have my follow-up, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. And yeah, my follow-up, and I think you actually just sort of mentioned it just offhand there. Would late termination and pregnancy loss through abortion be covered by this bill?
So my hope is yes, and this goes back a little bit to that language piece that I was suggesting of having the language a little bit more clear so that that is included. Termination for medical reasons, or TFMR as it's known in this community, and abortion, we see a lot of people that need support after those experiences. And if that is not included in this bill, there will be a lot of people, a big number of our community that are left unsupported. And those folks who are in those two kind of categories already find themselves without support. The TFMR community in particular, who are navigating termination for medical reasons, they will contact us and say, can we get support from you? And when people do that, my heart breaks, because they already are dealing with so much shame and guilt and spiritual and emotional and mental health impacts, and the fact that they think that we don't provide that service is deeply heartbreaking, because everybody deserves support who's experiencing loss.
Thank you, Member Irwin. MLA Nixon. Go ahead.
Chair. And thank you, Dee, for joining us here today, and for your compassionate work for so many people that need that. And didn't realize it until my wife and I started to work on having our own children and our friends in our network, and just how prevalent and these challenges are in our community and how hard it is. So thank you for your work. Just with that said, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your experience in supporting people through this challenging time, and kind of how society has changed and the perspective has changed, and maybe if you could speak a little bit to the challenges that you see with employers, whether or not they're willing to work with people experiencing this loss, or if you're still experiencing some challenges and lack of understanding for it.
Yes, thank you for that question. A really good question. And I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background, so I'm going to do my best here. Yes, so you're right. I think the conversation around pregnancy loss has definitely changed. It's starting to become more of an upfront conversation. However, we are seeing so much lack of support from employers. A big chunk of our work is actually working with our community to help them. How do I speak with my employer? How do I speak with coworkers? How do I actually ask for this time off? Am I entitled to time off? All of these questions. And I don't think it's for a lack of desire on the employer's part of how to do that. From what I'm seeing is that employers deeply want to support their employees, because employers know that when employees are supported, they're more loyal, they show up at work better. It's simply for them having a lack of understanding of how deeply impactful this experience can be and what support from an employer actually looks like. And so I think that that's where my suggestion of having an organization like ours actually go in and offer the service to HR departments and employers to arm them in how you can do this, I think would be so meaningful for this community and for employers, because I see the desire is there. It's just a really lack of understanding and the steps on how to actually implement it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up?
No, I think she's pretty thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Yeah, MLA Sigurdsson here. I put a question request in the chat.
Okay, not overlooked. Please go ahead. You're up.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation this morning. You did refer to this in your remarks, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to expand a little bit. So this bill is suggesting that 3 days is how much is available, and that is a start, absolutely. But we know that New Zealand, for example, has 3 days paid leave. Quebec has 3 weeks unpaid leave. And just in your opinion, how long is enough? What are the sort of the range of supports that are needed for the person experiencing pregnancy loss and her or his the person's supports?
So that's a tough question. I think that you're absolutely right that 3 days is not enough. Each journey is so individual. I think that 3 weeks, ideally, in my opinion, would be a much better time. 3 weeks would allow the physical part to at least have happened and some emotional and mental healing to start to begin. I think a part of the discussion too that needs to happen is that when we're talking about pregnancy loss and the impacts of pregnancy loss, it's not only this acute grief stage that needs to be supported. Oftentimes, the second and third year post-loss are even harder than the first year. And so anniversaries such as the date of death, the birth date, those need to be supported as well. Not to say that 3 weeks at that time is what is needed, but some acknowledgement from employers that time off to acknowledge that this is the 1 year anniversary of the death of a child would need to be implemented, in my opinion.
Okay. May I do a follow-up, Chair?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. Okay. And also, something that we did discuss last week with the sponsor of the bill, MLA Walker, was about, the person who's experiencing pregnancy loss may receive support from, not necessarily the person who maybe created the child, or it could be like someone's mom, or it could be a lot of people. And so sort of expanding that piece a little bit, like so that those people who are the real supports for the person experiencing pregnancy loss, just if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, thank you. So at the center, what we offer is a space for support for all people impacted by this loss. And so that includes the birthing person, partners, grandparents, siblings. I think those support networks, those natural support networks often get forgotten that they are also impacted. So they're holding space for the person and the partner who have experienced the loss And then how do they support them adequately? How do they support themselves? So last week, to end Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, we actually held a free workshop for supporting others through loss, and we had people attend who are those support networks. So midwives showed up, right? They're looking for tangible tools on how to support. So that goes back to like what I was saying of having those like a central hub of resources where people can come and actually access that easily. And I think what families and their support networks need is honestly systems that are working together. So healthcare workers, government, community organizations that are working together to get this information to the people that need it, so that people are not having to Google and look through, because it's very difficult as a grieving person or someone who's supporting a grieving person to start to navigate Google and find out what resources are there. It'd be nice to have that centralized resource available for families and their support people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions? Emily Nixon, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. Actually, just building a little bit off of that and talking about how government can work with you and other organizations that provide similar support. I'm wondering if you can expand a bit. Obviously, this bill is a great first step, as you've noted, in helping to address grief and support for people going through pregnancy loss. But how else can we be working? Do you have any other recommendations on how government can work with you and community to help address this concern?
Yes, if I look back to Bill 141 in Ontario, what that bill did is they basically funded this community organization. So they work in partnership with Sunnybrook Hospital and to get resources out to the community. So it allows Sunnybrook Hospital to focus their work on what they're good at, which is the medical piece, and then PALE, the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Network in Ontario, takes over when those people start to engage back into the community. So when they start going back to work, when they start to trying to conceive, pregnant again, and getting them involved with their peers in the community. So funding is obviously a huge issue because we're supporting people that are under-supported, and funding is always an issue, as you know, for community organizations. And then I think working in partnership to build that awareness that, there is this really reputable place that are experts in this field, and having our information distributed and fanned out in a way that is taking some of that guesswork off of the bereaved families. I think that's probably the two most important pieces in working together with government.
Perfect.
You have a follow-up? No?
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you.
no follow-up. Any other questions for Ms. Leveridge? Okay, hearing none. I want to thank you again for your presentation and your time this morning, including the time to answer our questions. Sounds like you are a resource and someone to turn to and your expertise on this matter for many people in this room. So thank you for your work as well. And we will now be moving on to deliberations. So the committee will now begin its deliberations on Bill 220, and at this time the committee must decide whether to recommend that the bill proceed or not proceed, and may also consider observations, opinions, or recommendations with respect to Bill 220. And with that, I will open up the floor to questions or comments. Member Irwin is flagging me down, so you will start. Please go ahead.
Thanks so much, Chair. And again, I would just like to thank Aditi and her fantastic organization for the work that they do. And I'm glad that this bill is quite all-encompassing in a few ways. And I think actually maybe just it's the teacher in me that really appreciates the opportunity for some education in this bill. I think we learned. I know I learned a number of things. Even just around inclusivity of our language, right? Birthing person, and very much moving away from gendered terms and other terms. So I think that's, like I said, I think that's a really important opportunity. And just to talk about, the range of experiences, that no experience is universal, and the fact that you know, pregnancy loss can happen in so many different ways, miscarriage, stillbirth, abortion, termination, and so forth. And so I think it's a really good opportunity for dialogue to destigmatize experiences for folks. And yeah, I want to, I certainly want to support this bill moving forward with, with the caveat that there were a number of, questions and concerns raised, including around the 3 days leave and around some of the language as I discussed earlier. But with that, I will allow other folks to weigh in on the deliberations. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Irwin. Anyone else in the room? Mr. Nielsen, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and also thank you for that presentation. I must admit I was rather, well, quite frankly, shocked when she gave me that statistic of 1 in 4. I really had no idea. And, even trying to, I guess, grasp what's going on with an individual during that time, as someone who, their child had, multiple medical challenges, growing up and things like that. I still cannot, connect with what it must be like. And so I guess I always keep coming back to around the leave and, how can we eliminate as many stressors as possible so that an individual, so that a family can come together and focus on trying to get through that challenge. And so, my hope is as I think the Assembly looks back on the Hansard transcript of this meeting, it will take, very seriously into consideration, is there other leaves currently available that we can move this into that will increase that level of support, be it more time, paid leave, when I see that 1 in 4, not everybody can just afford to take time off in a crisis. And so, when you look at it and you go, well, I can't afford to take it off, so that means I have to work. But then you're either not getting the support or you're not giving the support that's needed, which just exacerbates the problem. And so my hope is that, we can look at ways to make this bill even stronger. And of course, that's going to take the work of the Assembly to be able to get that done. And I'm certainly looking forward to hopefully maybe getting a chance to participate in that. So I would certainly recommend to other members that this proceed and that we give very, very serious consideration of where this could best fit so that it provides the most benefits and relieves as many stressors as possible so that people can focus on getting through such an incredibly difficult time in their life.
Thank you for those comments. Emily Rosen, go ahead. I see you, Ms. Sigurdsson. You'll be just after Emily Rosen.
Thank you, Chair. It seems today, I'm just going to take this off, sorry. It seems today as though we have bipartisan and community and stakeholder support for the compassionate efforts that this bill is aiming to accomplish. So with the will of committee, I would be happy to put forward a motion for this bill to proceed to the House.
Thank you for that. Well, I will go over some wording and you can just let me know if that's what you're hoping to have moved. That MLA Rosen moved that the Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Members' Public Bills recommend that Bill 220, Employment Standards, Expanding Bereavement Leave Amendment Act 2021 proceed. You're happy with that? Okay. We have the motion. Any other questions or comments to that motion? MLA Sigurdsson, did you want to go ahead?
I just was going to say, sort of before the motion came forward, I don't know if it's fits with where we are in process right now, but I mean, my suggestion was that maybe that this could be actually under personal and family leave to allow for more inclusive and flexible support for the person who's experienced the pregnancy loss. But I mean, we've moved on to this position. So, I mean, I think that that's perhaps not quite in order right now. So let's just talk about the motion. I'm fine with that going ahead.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments to the motion? Is there anybody for the list online? No? Okay. Then, hearing none, then we will call the question on the motion as moved by MLA Rosen. All those in favor in the room, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed in the room, please say no. And moving online, all those in favor online, please say aye.
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 And anyone opposed online, please say no. Thank you. That motion is carried. Now we'll be moving on to requesting a draft report. So members, the committee obviously just concluded its deliberations on Bill 220 and now should consider directing research services to prepare a draft report, including the committee's recommendations. Would a member like to move a motion to direct that research services prepare a committee draft report? Mr. Nielsen has moved that the Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Members' Public Bills, A, direct research services to prepare a draft report on the committee's review of Bill 220, Employment Standards Expanding Bereavement Leave Amendment Act 2021, which includes the committee's recommendations, and B, authorize the chair to approve the committee's final report to the Assembly on or before noon, Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. Was that the wording that you were hoping for, Mr. Nielsen?
It amazes me how you were able to just pull those words right out of my head.
I learned a lot from our previous chair who had the same talent. Any questions or comments to that motion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor in the room, please say aye. Aye. And anyone opposed in the room, please say no. And moving online, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Thank you. And anyone opposed to the motion online, please say no. Hearing none for that, the motion is carried. Thank you. And moving on to other business. Does anybody have any other business to raise at this time? Mr. Nielsen, go ahead.
So just for timelines here, I sense that maybe some of my colleagues might want to make, I guess, suggestions to the House to consider about, what other leaves we could consider maybe moving this to. And so maybe the best place to put that would be in a minority report, I'm thinking. So when would a due date for that be?
Mr. Rempel, do you have a suggestion on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think 4:30 tomorrow we could probably work with.
Any other questions for other business or comments? All right, hearing none. The next meeting will be at the call of the chair, and can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Mr. Long got my attention first. MLA Long has moved that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor in the room, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed in the room, please say no. And moving online, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And anyone online opposed, please say no. The motion is carried and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.